Welcome to Explore. I'm Mary Ruth Snyder. Our guest today is Inspector Jeff Preston of our local RCMP detachment. It's so nice to have you here. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about.
We certainly do, and thank you for having me.
Let's just start with you. How did you end up being an inspector for the RCMP? Where did your journey begin?
It began, I grew up in Alberta in a bedroom community of Edmonton called Sherwood Park. So started there, and my dad was with the RCMP, and it's kind of a family tradition, I guess. There's my dad, my uncle, my one brother, my other brother's with Edmonton City Police, and I have several cousins that are also with RCMP. So it's kind of a family tradition that we follow in Dad's footsteps, I guess.
All right. Now, did you go into training right after high school, or did you do some post-secondary?
No, after I graduated from high school, I went to the University of Alberta and got my commerce degree. And while I was taking that degree, I was applying for the RCMP. And so I graduated in 1995, and a few months later I was accepted and was off to Regina to the Depot Division for training. So.
Now, how did the path go from Regina to here?
So when you're at training, assuming that you're successful in your studies there, you graduate, you become or get sworn in as a peace officer, and then they will send you somewhere in the country. When you first join, you sign on as part of the contract that you will go anywhere in the country.
Okay.
So they do try to accommodate. They will ask you where would you like to go, but a lot of it comes down to needs of the organization. And I was lucky enough to get posted to a small town in northern British Columbia here called Chetwynd. Not everyone knows where it's at, but it's near the Alberta border. And so that was my first posting. So.
All right. And how long were you there?
I was there for 4.5 years.
And was it a two-man shop or three-man? Like how many postings?
At the time it was 10 officers were in that detachment.
Is that because of the area that you were covering?
Yes, it's a small town. It was only about 3,600 people in the actual town itself, about 6,000 in the entire detachment area. But our detachment area was massive. I mean, it's hours in each direction. And so it kept me busy. It was a good place to learn.
And where did you go after Chetwynd?
After Chetwynd, I took a transfer to Fort St. John, which, again, a little bit further north than Chetwynd is, and spent the next 8 years there. The reason I went there, and I guess I should say, after you take your first posting anywhere, when you leave that next post, you do have some say in where you're going. So when an opening came in Fort St. John, I was happy to go there because my fiance was born and raised there, and was working at the detachment at the time. So she didn't have to give up her position at the detachment, and it was a good position for me to go to.
And how long were you at Fort St. John?
8 years. So it was a longer than the normal stint.
I was going to say, those seem very long postings for RCMP.
So for Chetwynd, it's normally 4 to 5 years at the time. And then Fort St. John was, again, on average, would be about a 5-year posting. It's a little bit bigger detachment. Okay. But I really enjoyed it there. My wife's, it's her hometown. She has family there. It was really nice, and we started our family there, so it was nice having some family support around, especially when the kids were little. So.
Now, how many children do you have?
I have 3. I got the 2 oldest are boys, and then my youngest is the daughter, and so they're 15, 13, and 9.
What is your challenge as a parent, as a police officer, in this day and age, raising that age group?
Probably the biggest hurdle or challenge is that being teenagers, they hear things at school and see things on TV or on social media, and in particular the last 6 months to a year, there's been a lot of negative publicity, and they come home and they're hearing all these things from their friends about how bad the police are, and they're wondering like, hey Dad, is that you? Did you do this, or take part in any of this? And you have to explain that no, it's not like what you see on the media isn't always accurate, or it's a snippet of what's happening in one part of the country or world, and it's not necessarily indicative of what's going on in your home community or elsewhere.
Right. Now, after Fort St. John, what was next?
We took a bit of a flyer. I wanted to come to the coast, so an opening came up in Tofino, and for us, that for the RCMP, it's not. I mean, all postings have their positives and negatives.
Yeah.
Tofino, it can be busy, but it's a little bit more isolated. It's beautiful, obviously.
Yeah.
But it is a posting that, it's a limited posting, so you're there for 3 years. Well, when I was there, it was for 3 years only, and then
Okay.
you move on. But it was perfect place to take the kids when at the age that they were at, because they were,
Yeah.
we hadn't had my daughter yet, and the boys were 3 and 1 when they got there, so
Yeah.
it was a perfect age.
Excellent. Now, after Tofino, where did you go?
Then we moved to the Comox Valley, and not to the detachment, but there's a specialized unit that is stationed there, called the Island District General Investigative Section.
Oh, okay.
So they were responsible for helping out all the smaller provincial detachments that don't have a plainclothes unit to help with their more serious matters. So we went from Souk all the way to Hardy and all the islands that Island District incorporates. So there was a lot of driving, but the family was happy. They were in the valley there, and a little bit bigger community, a little bit more amenities for the kids to get involved with too, or activities. So
yeah. Now, what did you learn? What was the one thing you learned from your time in Chetwynd that still informs your activities today?
I think there's 2 things. First and foremost, being in a small detachment when you were working by yourself a lot, being able to communicate with people or talk to people of all walks of life is super important. There was lots of times I was working, by yourself in the middle of the night, and you're dealing with someone who's inebriated and you have to arrest, and you might have to take a little bit more time to talk them into your car as opposed to wrestle them into your car. Right. And so just being able to communicate to people is one. And number 2 is get involved in your community. A lot of communities, people are standoffish with the police because they're fearful of them. They don't need to be, but that's just a natural reaction. And so the more you interact with people on a positive note, just to let them know that you're human like everybody else and have the same problems and issues going on in your life that they do. So when they see you in your uniform, that they're not afraid to approach you, and then when you do have to do something negative, that they realize you're a human being and that you're not just a uniform.
Right. How long were you in the Comox Valley for?
I was there for 3 years, and then the opportunity arose to apply for the position here that I'm presently in, and I was fortunate enough to get selected for it. So.
And how many years have you been in as inspector?
I got here in July of 2014, so just over 6 years. So.
Okay, all right. Well,
don't tell my staffing people that, because they don't like leaving us here that long.
All right. Well, that's been quite a journey from Edmonton to Sherwood Park to Campbell River.
Yeah, no, it's been great. I can't believe how fast it's gone by. It's 25 years in the RCMP itself, and then my 4 years of university. But it's like almost 30 years since I graduated, and it seems like yesterday that it was like, okay, now what do I do?
Right. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but we will be back. You're watching Explore. I'm here with Inspector Jeff Preston from our local RCMP detachment. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Explore. Our guest today is Inspector Jeff Preston of our local RCMP detachment here in Campbell River and the district. Now, you shared with us your journey from your home in Sherwood Park in your teen years right through to how you landed in Campbell River. Now, in that time, and you've been in Campbell River since 2014, over the last, say, 4 years, there have been a lot of things happening globally with police around the world, specifically south of the border, especially over the last year. How does that inform what you do when you see what's happening south of the border?
Oh, everything that happens, especially in the United States, does tend to have an impact on us here as Canadians, just because a lot of our media comes from the States. And what tends to happen down there, they try to put the spin, or the media will put a spin on how it may be or is happening in Canada. So when we see the media reports, negative interactions with police, it does affect us. I mean, even from a morale perspective, because in a lot of cases, I know officers have expressed to me how frustrated they are, is that they're out in their communities doing their best, that they're not these evil individuals that they're being portrayed in the United States and elsewhere. And not to say that there aren't mistakes made by officers in any country. Of course they are. They're human, they're going to make mistakes.
Right.
But a vast, vast majority of the interactions that police have with the public are positive and have the proper outcome that they should. It's the ones that don't have the outcome that people want to see that end up on the news. But literally 99.99% of the interactions that police have will never make the news because they're not newsworthy, because it's not sensational.
Right. Now, I think the difference between the United States and a majority of the other democratic countries around the world is there doesn't seem to be a consistency in the training offered at all the different levels, because of course you have the FBI, you have CIA, you have the local state police, you have the local town and city and county police, and there doesn't seem to be a collaboration or a collaborative effort to establish synchronized training around sensitivity for people of color or Indigenous individuals. But I get the sense that in Canada that there is a much more concerted effort, and other democratic countries around the world, a much more concerted effort to provide that training across all platforms for the police. What is the state in the RCMP with regards to training around that?
Training, just globally, I guess we should start with, the RCMP does police a vast majority of the country, and of course all of our training standards, we have our national and then divisional training standards, but they all come from headquarters, so we all have one standard training. And really our training facility, right from day one, everyone goes to depot, or like we call it, the factory, and we all get trained the same way to start with, and then out to your divisions or provinces to get your more localized training because each province has their own laws and regulations. But our training with regard to sensitivity training or whatnot, that's a national, it's driven nationally.
Okay.
And we do try to work collaboratively with our other policing agencies within the province on a number of topics, including sensitivity training. But for example, in BC, we do have the provincial policing standards, so the province will come out and dictate to the policing agencies, regardless if it's the RCMP or Vancouver City or any of the other agencies that police this province, saying, here's the standards that you have to teach. You have to teach to this. So we do get a more standardized approach than what you see in the United States, I believe.
Okay. Do you see, like, you haven't done any service over in the Maritimes, but maybe from some of your colleagues, is there challenges in the Maritimes that are different from here, that are definitely territorial?
Again, because I haven't policed on the East Coast, I can't really state what the issues are there specifically. But I can say just even our own province, moving from town to town, each area has its own set of issues and challenges. But a lot of those challenges also are opportunities. So, and each community, they have distinct communities inside them. I mentioned Tofino. The Nuchanof people over there, great people to work with, but they have a very distinct culture. And you come across the island, and even though you're really not terribly too far away, there's very distinct changes working here with the First Nations people here. So there's similarities, but there's also differences. So you do have to, that's why it's very important to become involved in your community so you get to know the culture and the customs of everyone and the different demographics that are within your community.
Now, before we drill down on the community, I think we would be remiss if we didn't address what's going to be transpiring in the United States over the next little while. There is an election, and the outcome of that election could be anything, and by the time this airs, we will know what the result is. But from a policing point of view, what are you hoping that they are able to do in the days and weeks following the election?
As with any election, I mean, sometimes they can be controversial or contested. As a police officer and just even as a citizen of this country, all I would ever ask, and I would hope any democratic society, is that people respect the outcome of the election. And if there is a contested issue, that they do it through peaceful means, as opposed to inciting violence, because that never solves anything.
Right. When you look around the world at some of the other policing issues that have come forward over the last decade, how do you have that conversation with your members in terms of a Canadian viewpoint or through a Canadian lens?
We speak probably every day to one officer or another who is experiencing frustration or concerns over what they are seeing in the media or what they're hearing through their friends and family, because keep in mind most of the officers that are here, they've come from all across the country, so they have family and friends on the East Coast or whatnot. So you never want to just listen to, say, the news, because it's not maybe necessarily all of the facts. There's more information, but all we can tell them is that A, we're here to support you, but B, you do the best that you can do where you're at right now. Control what you can control, which is essentially your job here in Campbell River, and you have to have faith that the other people in the positions are doing their part to make things better.
Okay. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we will talk much more in depth with regards to our little city here and our district, because we have had some very big challenges in the last year or more, and they seem to be getting worse, not better. And I'm sure that your day-to-day has been made more challenging because of that. So you're watching Explore. We are here with Inspector Jeff Preston from our local RCMP detachment. We'll be right back.
This is my habitat house. My parents helped build it. Now we don't get wet when it rains. I don't get too hot or too cold inside. And I don't have to worry when the winds blow. This is my house.
This is my house. This is my house. My house. My house.
I can play with my sister. I can play with my brother. I can play with my mother, my father, my family.
My family. My family. This is my house. This is my house.
I can study. I can be safe with my family. This is my house.
This is my house.
My house.
My house.
This is my house.
Find out how you can help more families like mine have a safe, decent place to call home.
Welcome back to Explore. We are coming to you from the Tidemark Theatre in the city of Campbell River. Our guest today, RCMP Inspector Jeff Preston. Here in Campbell River, over the last year, the homeless population has, some would say, exploded. I guess at its highest point, they were well over 100 people that were not able to find housing in Campbell River. And there's been a number of incidences as of late. What are you doing?
We are working as hard as we can with the resources we do have and working with the agencies within the community and from the province to try and address a lot of the social order or disorder that you're seeing or hearing about. There is homelessness, and I don't want to, because the homeless population is very diverse in itself. So there is no one quick fix or one fix for everybody, because what one might work for one individual will likely not work for another. But we have to all work collaboratively if we want to solve this, because I can assure you that this is happening in almost every major city across the country, if not, well, across the continent. And it's not going to be solved by trying to arrest your way out of it.
Okay. Would you say, based on all of your 25 years experience in the RCMP, how would you describe the service groups within Campbell River, as well as Mayor and Council and the city and the district, in terms of working with the RCMP? Would you say that it's a collaborative relationship, or is it confrontational?
A vast majority of the agencies that we have here work very well with us. We've made a concerted effort to reach out to them, and some reaching out to us to work together to get to that goal where everyone's going to be happy. There are a few that we need to have a better collaboration with, that we're working with still and trying to get there. But I can assure you that Mayor and Council, I know, is working with us and doing everything that they can to supply the necessary resources. But in a lot of cases, it's not just Mayor and Council, because a lot of this has to do with the province. Right. And the homeless issue really needs help from the provincial agencies.
Now, as of late, there's been a death in our downtown. And is there a public safety issue around that, or was it an isolated incident?
The issue that you're referring to, or the incident where the individual was murdered, we are very confident that is an isolated incident, that there is no public safety risk to the general public at this time. And we continue to work on that file. Our major crime unit has taken that on, and they are making progress in solving that matter.
Okay. Now, in September, the Rose Bowl restaurant was transformed into what they call bridge housing for 20 individuals, and those individuals are now housed in the Rose Bowl. And when the housing for 50 units is completed at 580 Dogwood, the 20 from here will be moved up to the supportive housing. And for me as a citizen, I think what's unique about both of those locations is that there are services right on site 24/7. Is that helping your job?
I can tell you that since the Rose Bowl opened, it has been very successful. For us, the individuals that have been housed there are inside their home. That is their home now. Mm-hmm. And we're not getting calls for service because they have people that are there looking after those individual needs. And most of the individuals that were housed there, it was a social issue. It wasn't a policing issue for us. They were homeless. Right. They had a lot of medical needs yes. that we would often get called to as well, but we no longer get those calls. It's been short. Obviously, it hasn't been open that long, but I can tell you the staff has been amazing to work with us, mm-hmm. And the few issues that have arisen have been put to bed real quick.
Okay. Do you envision that once the facility is open at 580 Dogwood with the 50 supportive units, again, with supports on location, do you envision that that's going to have a significant impact on our downtown core?
I think it will have an impact for sure. How big that impact will be will remain to be seen. It has to help. The people that you see downtown, vast majority of them, like I say, have no place to go, so they hang out downtown. And you'll see the social issues that arise from that, where people will drink. If you have a drink in your home, no one thinks anything of it. But when you have no home and you have a drink in public, all of a sudden it's a major issue. It is against the law. It is against the Liquor Control and Licensing Act, and I understand that. But it won't be as much of an issue if people are drinking inside of their own home. And once they have a place to go to, and I also have to say that not all homeless people drink, and not all homeless people do drugs.
Right.
You see a core group downtown that certainly many do. But like I say, there's a lot that can be accomplished within those housing or supportive housing units, because they can be directed to the agencies that they need to go see to get the help long term.
Right. Now, one of the comments that I've heard consistently through the summer is that there were people showing up that actually this was not their normal home or territory. Have you found that a lot, where you're seeing faces come in that they are definitely not from Campbell River, and now that it's colder, have they left again? Like that transient aspect, where does that stand right now?
Since the day I arrived here, we've had people show up, transient people show up every year that are not from here. As far as, well, from the East Coast, that happens every year. We definitely have seen new faces in town, even in the last few weeks. Sometimes they stay for a day or two, sometimes a week or two, and sometimes they stay longer. Campbell River is kind of the northern hub for Vancouver Island, for many of our outlying smaller communities, when people come to town for services, and sometimes they end up staying. So we, like I said, we do have some people that are from outside the community, but a lot of the faces that I deal with downtown that have been there for a while, they are true Campbell River residents.
Okay. With regards to the mental health challenge that comes with this, so you've got not just that there's a homeless issue. In some cases, there is mental health issues. In some cases, there is addiction. In some cases, it's fetal alcohol syndrome. In some cases, it is alcoholism. In some cases, it's just homelessness. So how do you manage that?
I'm glad you brought that up, because mental health calls have skyrocketed in the past decade, not just here in Campbell River, but across the country, or at least the province for sure. But I can, talking to my colleagues elsewhere, I guarantee it's across the country. It is a significant challenge, because having a mental health issue is not a criminal issue. However, a lot of times it becomes a criminal issue because people have been put out onto the street because they don't have anywhere else to go, because the hospitals that were housing them before have been shut down.
Right.
So they end up on the street, and agencies are trying to manage individuals on the street, but it is extremely difficult. And when you get the call at 2 o'clock in the morning that somebody's having a mental health crisis, it's too late because we're the only agency open, and we're the ones going to have to deal with it. Right. And I mean, we do receive training in how to deal with people that are having mental health issues, but we're certainly not doctors, we're not psychiatrists, and we do the best we can to alleviate the problem there and now, but a lot of times it's a revolving door. Right. I've had numerous incidents where we deal with an individual who, in my mind, is sick. We take them to the hospital, and before the officer can finish writing up the report, the person's already out of the hospital, and we're dealing with the same issue again. Okay.
So that is a provincial issue, because they oversee healthcare in the country of Canada. So you mentioned training. Does your training evolve? Like, as new techniques and new information comes forward, do they implement that into your training on a regular basis so that your training is evolving with the new information?
Yeah, I mean, policing has changed dramatically in the 25 years that I've been involved.
Okay.
So the things that we were trained at depot are not necessarily being trained now. In fact, I guarantee a lot of it has changed. There's been a lot of effort put into dealing with mental health crisis or calls and teaching officers the ability to deal with those situations.
So a de-escalation.
De-escalation.
Okay.
The problem is that as good as your training can be, there is sometimes that you can do everything right and it can still turn very, very poorly. And and I mean, I know that there's been a declaration of a medical crisis going on with the opioid epidemic.
Right.
In a lot of cases, the individuals that are using those substances, again, are not thinking straight. And when they're in that state, we end up dealing with them. And they don't act rationally. And you hope you get it right. You do everything you can, use your training, but like I say, sometimes it doesn't go the way you want it to. So we're hoping to see that, you know, a lot of the other agencies that are meant to deal with mental health issues or addiction issues, that they can step up and take on some of that load from us.
Okay. So we are out of time, but in closing, what would you like to express to the community?
I'd like to express that the men and women of this office have done a tremendous amount of work trying to ensure that everyone here is safe, and I believe we have an extremely safe community. And that if you do have any issues or concerns, please call. We're always willing to talk and explain things, because if you get your news through social media, that's not the best way to get it, and you won't be getting the whole information package. So call us if you have a concern. We will do what we can for you. But in some cases, the issues that you are seeing, especially in the downtown, really need to be addressed by mental health and addictions personnel, and not necessarily the RCMP.
Okay. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you and sharing all the things that you did with us, and we will have you back again.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. You've been watching Explore. We have been coming to you from the Tide Mart Theatre in the city of Campbell River. Please join us again.